I'm going westbound on Sunset Boulevard. We're going to be passing the house with all the statues in front of it. And then you'll pass the fake Sunset Boulevard driveway that was actually used in the movie when Joe Gillis's car had the blowout. The driveway's still there, and where Jayne Mansfield's house used to be, and I've heard that the heart-shaped, or the front gates with the J and the M in them are still there. Now these are the statues I was talking about, and you'll see a little boy, two little boys spinning. Those were actually from Rock Hudson's estate, right there. The fake Sunset Boulevard driveway is right there. And where Jayne Mansfield's Pink Palace stood, and where I've heard the gates are, was over there on the left, there. And if you look through those trees, those shrubs, you can see the wall. Ooh, I think they're there. I think they're still there. I think they're still there. This is the Bel Air we're in right now, and gosh, on the old Graveline tour, this used to be a regular stop, where these would be Ava Gabor's tennis courts, and over on this side was Gary Cooper's last home. And Ava Gabor's house is gone. Her tennis courts are still here, miraculously. For the time being, anyway. You can kind of see the tennis courts back there. And that's Sunset Boulevard. So somebody I know told me back then when the Mansfield house was being destroyed that there is a tunnel underneath from Ava Gabor's house to the back of Jayne Mansfield's house. And I couldn't for the life of me find this thing if I needed to. And I don't know where it was, somewhere around here, because the Mansfield house was back there, the Pink Palace. The famous house that was owned by Jayne Mansfield, originally Rudy Valley, ultimately Engelbert Humperdinck, and ultimately destroyed. So this tunnel took us from underneath, from this side to that side. I don't know how we got to it, but we did. My buddy Steve and I. Because we couldn't do it above ground, but I wish we could. Because look at this, about 20 lanes. But this is certainly the street from Sunset Boulevard in the movie Sunset Boulevard. During the car chase scene at the beginning of the film, when Gillis was the repossessors were coming after his car, they 100% came right through here. And he had his blowout right around there, and then went into the driveway that's still there, it leads to nothing anymore, but that's from Sunset Boulevard. I'm going to try to park and go over there. So I'm going to do this walk. I wanted to do this for several years, and I'm risking a ticket, but I want to see the Jayne Mansfield gates that are still left on the property. When they tore down the Pink Palace, they were going to make several little mansions, they call them McMansions, in its place. And I really am confused as to what actually happened, because they were, it was all boarded up, or not boarded up, but all hidden behind these large hedges, and there was a lot of construction vehicles. I thought there were houses that were built, but if you look at Google Earth, they weren't built. Sometimes Troy found an old Google Earth image, and the little heart-shaped, like, kiddie pool was still there years later, because alongside the heart-shaped swimming pool was the kids' pool that was also heart-shaped. So it's confusing as to what happened. I thought there were houses on the property. There aren't. They're building something else years later. But you can see why I wouldn't cross that street. That's where I was a minute ago, over there. And you can't just do this, because it's terrifying. So back there, on this way, was the old Mansfield property. So the famous Pink Palace was destroyed, and we hopped the fence and managed to scramble around the property. This was November of 2002. And it was pretty spectacular. A very rainy day, and the mansion was long gone, actually, or not that long gone, but it was a pit, but there was lots of rubble around. And we were able to get into the grounds. And when we were sort of running around, across the street over there, that's where the Gary Cooper house was, and on the left is where Ava Gabor's house used to be. So we got out of the tunnel and we hopped that fence, and we were in Jayne Mansfield's backyard, and the giant heart-shaped pool was gone, but it was a giant heart-shaped hole in the ground that was filled with this sort of green, murky water. Now, there were two sets of gates to the Mansfield house, and this gets a little confusing because we had a set of gates in the dearly departed tour's office. So the gates that were at the corner of Carrollwood and Sunset Boulevard were the famous white gates that we had. There was another set of gates, these gates that I wanted to find today, and they were the ones that had the white writing that said, spelled out the address, 10,100 Sunset Boulevard. We have the sign that says 10,100 Sunset Boulevard. They were over the gates on the side of the property, but the gates that we have were from the front of the property. It's kind of confusing, but what puts those gates apart is because the gates that are still there on Sunset Boulevard have the J and have the M. The JM didn't stand for Jayne Mansfield, but it actually stood for Jayne and Mickey, as in Mickey Hargitay, her husband, who lovingly put together the Pink Palace for Jayne. Engelbert Humperdinck, the singer, had the house for years and years. He tried to sell it, didn't want it destroyed, but he ended up having to get rid of it eventually. So the full-size trees that were back there were all tagged, and they were removed by somebody who sold the full-size trees to people who wanted to buy full-size trees. I looked it up the other day, and a full-size palm tree will go for about $15,000 right now if you wanted to buy one that was fully grown. So, but peeking over the back gates, when we were back there, my gosh, you could see what was left of the barbecue. And there's the famous picture of Jayne and Mickey having a barbecue, and what was left of it in this muddy pit was still back there. And then there was the grotto that had the statue of Mary on top of it, or that had the statue of Christ on top of it, and that was still back there too. Okay, I'm going to stop now because you need to see this. Look at this as we're heading up. That's where the mansion was. That's where the famous Pink Palace was. And nothing's been built there since. It was like it didn't need to be torn down. Sad. But there were two sets of gates to the property. The ones that were on the corner that had, the ones that we have, but the 10,100 came from the side address that was part of the old driveway. So I can't believe they're still here. There's another great picture of Jayne standing in front of a waterfall, and I mean, you could still match up the rocks. The waterfall was still there. Check it out. This is so cool. This is like archaeology, and it wasn't even that long ago, but that's the way LA is. I mean, it's like this Indiana Jones adventure. But look, there they are. The J.M. Gates. Jayne and Mickey. Still there on Sunset Boulevard. So the address, the 10,100 that's spelled out, we're actually above these gates, and those are what we have. But we have the gates themselves from the front of the house. There's the M, with Jayne Mansfield famously had that picture peeking through the M, and there's the J. But being able to run around that property before it was completely gone was really something else. There's no detail more famous about the Pink Palace, well, aside from it being pink, that's more famous than the heart-shaped pool, the famous heart-shaped pool that Mickey had built for Jayne. And when I was back there, as I showed you in earlier photographs, what was left of the pool was still there. It was just a heart-shaped hole in the ground, but there were lots of tiles left in the pool. I mean, I filled up a bag full of these little blue tiles, and actually, if you want to buy one, I'll sell one to you. If you look at the link below, the blue pool tiles are for sale, as are little pieces of pink stone from Jayne's house that I got when I was back there, back in 2002. So, but the heart-shaped pool was gone. There was a kiddie pool as well, a little heart-shaped kiddie pool that was back there, and I wish I could have taken it, but it was laying there on its side. Just the ruins of this amazing mansion left there, and it was an honor to trudge around the grounds there. And my buddy Steve and I had just the best day. And I'm not shy. If you want to buy a piece of the Pink Palace, you can look at the links below, and I'll sell it to you. A piece of the pool tiles and a piece of the pink, also pieces of the accident car, if you want to even go there. But again, it was an honor to be back there, and I hope you enjoyed this little trip of down Sunset Boulevard to see those famous gates, which I can't believe are still there. I didn't think I'd ever get back here to see these again. I don't think I ever see them again. But look at that, the JM, the Jayne Mansfield gates. They still exist.
You heard me.